Hello and welcome back to Christian News and Views. This is episode 21. Now, today I'm going to be reporting on a court case, actually, that it's a local court case, but because of the nature of it, it has state and national implications. And I just want to show you this it's, right here. So, defense may claim U.S. is owned by London bankers. This is a very interesting case that is both amusing in some ways, but it also has some serious implications. So, it's a criminal court case, actually involving a marijuana growing charge. This man was arrested because of it was discovered that on his property there was equipment and so forth for growing marijuana. And so, in the process of the court hearing, he declined the right to a public defender. So he didn't give any reasons as far as incompetence or that they couldn't do the job and so on and so forth. He had a rather interesting claim. He filed a 57-page court filing, and in it he claims that he is an agent of the Moroccan Empire Trust with diplomatic immunity and legal protection under Florida law. Now, before you start laughing, hear this out, because this is not just this guy. This is something that's been going on across our country, apparently. I had never heard of it before, but in reading this whole article, some things were brought out. And so I thought that this would be one in which I should comment on. It doesn't really involve Christian principles as far as being strictly Christian. This has to do with our court system and our rights and limits, if you want. So I just wanted to take a look at this because I think it is important that we take a look at this and don't just dismiss it before you read it. When you're all said and done, I think I know where you're going to go, what your opinion is, and I'm going to give my opinion. Now, this defendant alleges that all lawyers work for a crown trust that is linked to the Knights Templar. Now, apparently, this is a common tactic by what they call sovereign citizen advocates. And we'll get into that a little bit more here. This all reflects a larger movement known as the Moorish Nationals, who claim to be part of an indigenous American government with certain treaties with the United States. Now, this particular organization is mostly black Americans claiming to be the original inhabitants of the Americas and denying African ancestry. However, their ideology is shared with a larger sovereign citizen movement, which is largely white. So you have people who are both black and you have people who are white, and there may be other ethnic groups in there as well, who are claiming sovereign citizenship. Now, what does that include? Well, these claims include a belief that the United States is not a true government, but rather a corporation owned by interests in the city of London. Not London, Canada, Ontario, Canada, but London in England, through the banking system. The banks rule, and this is a quote, the banks rule the temple church, and the attorneys carry out their orders. Now, this is starting to look and sound rather ludicrous and funny, and in some respects it is. But it's also serious. We're talking about a court system that handles thousands upon thousands upon thousands of the cases throughout the nation every year. So we need to take a serious look at this case and make a determination about it. So in this case, this is in the circuit court system at this particular level, this time. And Circuit Judge Lisa Porter struck down this idea that they are sovereign citizens of a foreign entity, I guess you'd say. But they are sovereign citizens of America, that they were here first. I'll get into that more in my opinion. When she made an opinion of her own, and listen to this. She struck down the motion, noting such cases have been deemed by other courts, and she don't mean just other courts in Florida, but other courts throughout America, as frivolous, a waste of court resources, patently ludicrous, and have been rejected repeatedly by the courts. So, here's my opinion on this whole thing. While this at first glance strikes me as funny, further examination brings a more serious, more sober view, if you will. Namely, that as the judge noted, such cases are frivolous, a waste of court resources, ludicrous, and have been and should be rejected. Now I'm adding some words here. She did not say should be. I'm adding them. Our court systems are packed full of serious cases with ramifications that can affect the entire nation and even on the international stage. They lead to can lead to serious criminal charges, impacting states and the nation itself as well. We simply don't need to have our court systems so blatantly misused. Unfortunately, if you clamp down on cases such as this, it would negatively impact all citizens of this country. So the judge had a problem, and I think she handled it rather well. I believe that the court, or in this particular court, in fact, are right in dismissing these kind of cases. But not just this court, any court, they have that right in dismissing it because it fails the test. They stated the test itself. Let me repeat what it said. Frivolous, a waste of court resources, patently ludicrous, and have been rejected repeatedly by the courts. That's sort of like a standard. And that is something that the courts were right in establishing a standard. She's the first one that I've ever heard of, and she's stating a standard, and I think it's a very well thought out standard. And she didn't just do it with one thing, she had several things listed in that standard. But at the same time, I do believe the initial case is also a right because all citizens have the right of judicial review. By that I mean we have recourse to the courts to resolve situations that are on the local level that impact us as citizens. Its judicial system is not just set up for criminals. It's also set up for anything that impacts individuals like me, like you. And so I believe that we all have a right to bring our cases to court. That is where that standard comes in. Because it is up to them, or you and me, to prove to the court that the case should go forward. Now, in this case, the defendant was unable and unwilling to prove anything, so the court acted accordingly. Now, just to further this idea a little bit, let's say that I had a case. Maybe somebody defrauded me. I would have a case where I could say I want to go and sue in court. Or maybe somebody brought a legal charge against me, charging me with some kind of a crime. So I have a right to have my case held in the court of law and have it tried, and have lawyers there if necessary, depending upon the level. And so the thing is this: that's a citizen's right. And I think that is a right that we need to not only use when needed, but we need to protect it as well. And so I'm not jealous at all of this judge. I think she had a very difficult situation to face. On the one thing, she saw this case as being just outlandish. But at the same time, she recognized there was a right for him to bring his case to court. So there had to be a standard. I don't think she invented the standard. I think she looked at cases over, and if that standard wasn't stated before, she then drew one out of all those court cases, and stated either way there was a standard that was either implied or actually stated before it got to her courtroom. And so that is a situation which I think she acted very appropriately. She gave him his opportunity to actually, first of all, start out with the opportunity to have a public defender so that he would have legal representation. He declined it based on this other stuff. And so that case is still going forward. This was not resolving the case of marijuana. This is resolving the situation of representation. Now, I don't know if I think a court can approve legal representation like a public defender, whether he wants it or not. I'm not sure about that. I'm not a lawyer. So I don't know. The article didn't cover that. But the thing is that she had to rule on this particular motion. And she did so, and I think it was a very appropriate one because she acted on my behalf, your behalf, as well as how this was to play out in her courtroom. And so I think that was very important. We live in a country of rights. We live in a country of law and order. And we live in a country where we want to have an informed citizenry. Unfortunately, our newspapers, news media have failed us in that in recent decades. But that's another issue. We're not going to get into that one today. I've covered that one already. But we live in a country that is a Christian country based on Christian laws, and it is sort of, I said it's not really a Christian principle, but I think if you look in the Bible, God gives us certain rights. And in fact, when our country was founded, it was founded on rights, what they called natural rights. Well, those are rights given by God. They were not worshiping some nature god. They were Christians for the most part, either Christians or at least advocates of the Christian worldview. And in either case, there were rights involved. And so we have rights. And the courts, that's one of the things the courts do. They not only resolve crimes, but they have to face the fact of when A citizen comes into their courtroom, that citizen has certain rights, certain obligations, certain rules and so forth apply and all that, but they are there as a overseer, so to speak, to make sure that that citizen's rights are not violated, but at the same time, if that citizen is guilty of something, that citizen must bear punishment for it. So I wasn't there. I'm just going by the article that I read, but it certainly sounds to me like she did a fantastic job. Now, going forth, going bigger, looking at it from a national perspective. Our court systems, and I made this statement earlier, they handle thousands of cases all the time. I've heard stories of how they're backlogged. We're supposed to get a quick trial. That's one of our rights, if you will. Unfortunately, because of the backlog, that doesn't always take place. So sometimes you might be arrested for something, and it may be weeks, months before, and I think there's even been some cases where it's been years before somebody's case came up before the courts. And that's unfortunate. I would like to see them resolve that if it's possible. But in this particular case scenario, I think that the standard that she established, at least quoted, is a standard that needs to be perhaps published if it isn't already. I think it's something that we should support as citizens because it protects our rights, but at the same time makes it possible for the courts to rule on a particular situation or in this case motion. And so, in my opinion, she was right in what she said, and I'm glad she did. She quoted it the way she did because it provides us with the kind of protection we need. We need to have a court system we can trust. We can't always trust it. People have been wrongfully convicted. Does that mean our court system is corrupt? Some people might argue yes. I think our court system is overburdened. I think that sometimes, even though it moves forward at a snail's pace, things seem rushed at times. And people can make all sorts of charges and counter charges. But it is a place, a legal place, where those things should be handled. And they need to have standards. And here is a case where one was stated and applied, and I think it protected the rights of American citizens. You might disagree, and you're entitled to. You're even entitled to comment on it if you want. But that is what one of the things in this podcast will apparently once in a while take a look at something that may not be of a first glance of national issue, but when you really look at it, it could be. And it is something that we don't want to abuse our court systems, but at the same time, we want to be able to have the right to go to the court systems to get them to resolve issues that we have. Now, one of the things that I want to point out to you, that if you enjoy Christian news and views, and don't forget, I'm still learning as I'm going, so if you have some advice, you want to see different types of things covered or stuff like that, feel free to do so. I'll look at it. Whether I will do it or not, that depends upon what you're suggesting. That depends upon time and everything else that I have. But I want to know what you think. So if you enjoy it, why not subscribe? Just subscribe. It's right down below here. Just subscribe and you will have easy access to these episodes. And you can read them and you can go back. One of the great things about it is that you can go on YouTube and go back as often as you want. And when you actually subscribe, they get into your channel if you have your own YouTube channel, and you can go in and they're right there for you to review. I already do some of that, and I'll probably do more of that, of actually going in and watching and checking these out, because they're being brought to me. So because I subscribed, and I'm being able to maybe catch up on things that I missed in the past. So that's something that you might want to consider. I'm enjoying this. By the way, this is Thanksgiving week. I will be having a Thanksgiving message coming up on Thursday, and it will be the primary thought there. That's usually reserved for King James Bible and for the Word of God itself. And it does refer to it, but it's going to be a Thanksgiving message of my thoughts to you, and I hope you tune in and watch that. In the meantime, you have a great day, a great week, and I'm praying that you will have a fantastic and very enjoyable and blessed Thanksgiving. See you later in the next episode.